Oops.
Oh, oops. There we go. Welcome to the show.
Wasn't me.
That was meant to be a nice, smooth transition like this, and it just didn't work. Anyway, we're back. Oh, another week, another year.
Another year, yes. Another year, another few pesos.
So, where did we leave it last time? So we're gonna
in 2022
answer everyone's everyone's questions. So get them in the chat while we can. We have guests today. We're going to answer everyone's questions, try and get to everyone's questions, and we're also going to continue that the snow projection that we're doing from last week, bit of coding there, and make it all 3D, and that'd be cool. So, all right then, let's do the thing. Let's do the thing.
The thing. Okay, my mic supposedly was quiet. So how about now?
You're good. You're good.
All right.
Jeffrey's go.
Be nice. Be respectful. Be constructive. We have standards. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive. Come on, folks. This is common sense. Don't advertise or promote your services. Don't keep posting the same question over and over. Every time you post it, we move it to the bottom of the list. Harassment of any kind, not tolerated, incels, bigotry, misogyny, etc., etc. And we do share ban lists with the Slacks and Discords and such, so you might not be able to get into them if you're mean here. So last and not least, have a good time.
Indeed, good time. Let's do the introductions. So my name's Simon Lightfoot, Flutter Community Leader, CTO Dev Angels London, and you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott.
I am Scott Stahl. I'm a community leader also. I help organize GDG Cleveland. And rumor is that I have an office under the stairs next to Dobby at Dev Angels London.
All right. And then we've got some people with us. So Randall, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Randall Schwartz back again. Happy New Year, everyone. And I'm a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert, one of the first batch. So it's been a while now, 4 years, somewhere in there. And I'm also a full-time Flutter developer, and I am the question magician for this show, which means that I'm watching our live chat. And if you put a question in there with a Q in front of it, I know that that's for us and not just random chat, which also happens. So put a Q in there, and we'll put you in the queue. First daddy joke for the for this show.
I was going to say, you said you were one of the first GDEs. Does that make you the template? Are you like the cookie cutter template for all GDEs?
Before they made me, they broke the mold. I don't know. Yeah.
And then they broke the mold before they made you, so they made you out of a broken mold.
I said that. That was the joke.
Course,
yes. Thank you for re-echoing the joke.
Of course, we have another guest, Swav. Well, welcome to this madhouse.
Another GDE, another old GDE. Okay.
There's a head poking up from the bottom of the camera there.
Yes. Yes. So, I'm a GDE, and for quite a while, and I'm also a lead Flutter developer at Kin&Carta. If you have ever heard of Kin&Carta, that's where I live.
All right, let's crack on there. So as we're just saying,
have some code.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's. I mean, we could do this a couple of different ways. So we could do Q&A first. We could do some live coding, and then just do questions as we go. I don't know. Like I'll leave it up to you guys to decide. I'm good either way.
Well, we have a couple of questions, although
a couple of questions. Yeah.
One's quick and easy. Another, I'm not sure what it would have to do with us. Let's take a quick look here. Matt, I believe what you're actually looking for is Robert Felker's.
Well, he's not been doing art. He's not been doing a lot recently. So, but yeah, there's still people generating art and so on with this. I came across this library. Hang on.
And I did put the link to Robert's in the chat, by the way.
And I put the link to Funvus in there too, which is also another good one from Creative, maybe or maybe not. He does cool stuff. So Funvus is fun, and that's in the chat too. So
let's see if I can find something here. This wasn't necessary. It's just something that I came across just the other day, and you just reminded me of this. So you know,
Wow.
you see these YouTube. You know, this. I'll share some content here. You know, you see these YouTube videos where they've got these fancy animations, like I don't know, like all sorts of like graphs that are moving and animating and so on, and all these fun things. It came to my attention that actually there's a lot of these are actually done in this library called Manim. It's an animation library and so on for. Let me just bring this up. So I was thinking about this, thinking this is done in Python. Let me see if I can share this on the stream. I know. We'll see what happens. Python, yeah, I know.
yeah.
So yeah, this is the library Manim. I'll pop it in the chat for everyone. But it occurred to me that maybe we should all get together and like kind of see if we can do like a port to Dart, because if we go to the website here, the way that they actually design, you know, these are the examples. Another example. No. I think there was a docs examples. I remember seeing examples somewhere here. Tutorials and guides. Example gallery. That's a black and white one. So yeah. So basically, to get this image out, this is the code that goes in, right? Here's another example. You know, you can just say like brace over this line, and it just gives you a brace. It does text, no latex formatting as well. So you get like this mathematical sectors, but also things like this, like dot, arrow, blah, blah, blah. And it's just done, right? So it's really powerful, but it does this. It does these kind of nice animations as well.
Oh, cool.
And it just occurred to me that the way that they actually do it is I wonder if we could just like a one-to-one conversion in Dart. And then we could start doing these kind of nice animations with Dart and Flutter or something, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like there's probably something here. I don't know what it is. I haven't looked at the code in detail, but yeah, I feel like people better do these nice animations, because one of the things that we came across, in fact, we discussed this before, didn't we, Scott? Like in the community, and that is if you want to do these like fancy animations and like if you want to do video, instructive coding videos, you really need like some really nice like animations to show what is happening in the data, to explain it a bit easier, visualize what's happening. And it's still quite a lot of code to do that with Flutter, right? Like you got to generate a bunch of widgets, you have to lay them all out. So it'd be nice to have something more imperative, maybe something more sort of like this, which is like place these things, animate this thing to this thing, wait for it to finish animating and do these other things. And it just ends up being very more than like capturing the output, right? So I don't know, there's a lot of options in here. I'll share this link for the examples if you can have a look at it.
I've often, as a presenter, I use Keynote primarily as my main sort of go-to, because I can do a few interesting transitions and stuff. But I've often wanted, as a presenter, to have a much smarter scriptable interface. And it seems like I should be able to create a Flutter desktop app that I would then throw through my screencasting system, to create a really slick video.
I hate to break it to you, but
Wow.
in 2018, particularly October of 2018, Tomek Polanski did a talk at DroidCon London where he not only used Flutter for his slides, he ran it off of his phone.
Wow.
Which was a wild trick.
Well, is that open source? Can I see that and borrow it?
Yeah.
I mean, Tomek, where's Tomek?
Yeah, but I mean, like this stuff, like just doing this kind of stuff, like zooming the camera in and focusing on the and then following stuff. Like all this stuff, and like look, done in a handful of lines, you know, and like that's what we need to do. Like even like this, like zooming in and like looking at detail of something is all done with their camera system. So I feel like there's some legs in, like, you know, like even doing like 3-dimensional stuff, you know. And there's interactive scenes you can do as well, so you can interact with them. Anyway, moving on. Sorry, completely off topic. I know that wasn't what you're asking for, Matt, but
I think the generative art is more about essentially fractals and some other cool stuff.
Oh yeah, it was generated art. Yeah.
But there was I don't know, I don't remember which conference this was. Those was the one with Art of Code, and there was
that was Flutter Europe. I have the video. I can get the video link. Yeah.
no. I mean,
Yeah.
there was on Flutter Europe as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Dylan.
Yeah, but there was another one.
Oh.
There was one about essentially generating pictures in Flutter.
Okay.
Well,
this is the Art of Code by Dylan and Flutter Europe. I posted the link in hopefully if the video posts, it'll post in the chat for everyone. It's thinking about it. And then maybe we'll do it over here instead. There you go. That's going to post twice. Of course it is. Right. Anyway. All right. So we see what else we got in the question queue here. Yeah. Again, for those that are just joining, make sure you put Q in front of your questions, and we'll get them in the chat. Otherwise, we think talk amongst yourselves. Right. Let's see. What's the next one? 0W. Is it possible to navigate using custom action to the customer widgets? Today I am trying to do it. It shows like context is not defined. I think for custom action, Flutter Flow doesn't add context.
Ooh,
so this is specifically a Flutter Flow question.
Yeah.
Never used it. Couldn't tell you.
Yeah, that's. Well, we were just kind of discussing that on the side. We're starting to get a good bit of scope creep here. We're trying to answer Flutter questions as in the SDK. We try to help with some packages now and then, but if not really qualified to answer questions about Flutter Flow or about Play Store policies.
Yes.
So yeah, that's way out of our scope.
So to be clear,
I mean, yeah, yes and no, because it's like in the end you have to publish this somewhere, right?
I know, but Swav, we're trying to keep it to an hour, and we're still running 2 hours and 15 minutes just answering Flutter questions.
Yeah.
The wife is getting mad because I'm losing too many billable hours.
Right.
Yep.
Today I'm going to. Well, I'm reading this right. The context is not defined. Custom action Flutter Flow doesn't have context. I couldn't tell you for sure, but it sounds to me like I would go into the Flutter Flow forums and specifically talk or reach out to the Flutter Flow support team to ask this question. This sounds like a bug in Flutter Flow specifically, but maybe you're trying to modify the code. If you're trying to modify the output of Flutter Flow, then yeah, it's probably because you're trying to do something in the init state where the context is not yet set, and you should probably be moving that to did change dependencies.
Or you're trying to access in a place where you don't have access to it, actually.
Yeah. Best we can say right now without knowing have more context. Hopefully that helps. All right.
Yep.
Shaska. Do you want to take the question? Someone else take a question.
In my new company, I've seen people use hard-coded size values for widgets. Using screen util packages with size from a Figma file. Is it really necessary to use hard-coded values? Not only is it not necessary, it's seriously not recommended.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think all these smart exports now can actually export styles. So it's the way essentially how design is done in Figma, and then how you transfer it. It's more,
Yeah, it's like it's about the constraints and how they've been set up in Figma. Probably that Figma sees that it's not like match parent, it doesn't like match left and right, so it exports it with a fixed size or something. But to be honest, no. The answer is it's not necessary. It's never necessary. In fact, you should shy away in most situations from any sort of fixed size, right? You want it to be responsive. You want it to react to the size of the device. For example, if you get like a Samsung phone that's like like a 20:9 ratio, which is like a really long and thin thing, like the iPhone 12 versus like a Pixel 5 or something, and it's slightly fatter, you get a different aspect ratio, which means you get a different size, and you don't just want it to like center and lose this like margin on the left and right because that's usable screen space. So you want it on the Pixel 5 to be slightly longer, but to have that space, right? Yeah.
And this was going to be part of like, all you have to do is take a tablet or a phone and rotate it. And now everything's messed up. And also, what happens if your customer says, we also want it in web. You know,
I think
now you're completely messed up. I would recommend using Widget Book and not putting any sizes in your widgets. And then when Widget Book displays it, then you pass in your constraints. Now, if you need to maintain a certain aspect ratio, an aspect ratio widget it's perfectly fine. Just to make sure that you maintain that, but you want the parent setting the sizes.
Yeah, I can say just another little bonus, just a little bonus point there. If aspect ratio widget blows up in you, it's because you don't have you have an unconstrained width and height. It needs a constraint in one of the dimensions so it can force the aspect ratio in the other.
And I believe it prioritizes width, doesn't it?
No. It just I think it takes the space available. But most of the times you put something in, width is the constraint.
But that's what I'm saying is that if it runs out of width first or it runs out of height first, you know, I remember reading something in the docs. Check the docs on that. But it does look for one, and if it doesn't find it, then it looks for the other. And if it, as Simon said, if it can't find either one, then it breaks down and cries. So
it doesn't do one then the other because it fits the aspect ratio inside the other one, like contain. I'm pretty sure.
No,
I'll
look it up.
This looks like a very good subject for some code generator, which actually you take this dummy Figma generated Flutter widget and you export essentially all the parameters for all the paddings that you can inject them.
I mean, like the nice thing is with that, what we were talking about earlier, the widget book stuff is that you kind of get, you can see that. So widget book lets you host your widget. You can change the padding. You can change, like, you have sliders and things that you set up yourself to allow you to see how your widget reacts to different settings and configurations within your app. So you can actually just say like tablet, phone, whatever, and see the difference. All right.
I do want to bring up one thing real quick. There's a GetX question in there, and really, just straight up, GetX has changed so many things that if you were to try to refactor a GetX app into a Flutter app, people have tried. They just have to start over. So basically, we consider GetX to be a completely different framework at this point, and we don't recommend it. So I'm sorry if you got a GetX question. We're not trying to ignore you, but you're using something that, again, is out of our scope and not recommended. So,
right, moving on.
For work for the first, looking for work. What are good places to find contracts, and generally what skills are Flutter devs expected to have in 2023? Let me grab that banner.
One second. The very first part of this, I want to mention that. Her name. I forgot her name. This is embarrassing. The lady who did Flutter jobs. Natalie Mascooper. That's it. Yeah. Natalie has shut down. Is it flutterjobs.info or flutterjobs.com?
She shut it down. Oh dear.
Yeah.
No, and it's because it's no longer needed, right? Like there's plenty of opportunities on LinkedIn. It's flutterjobs.info, I think. Yeah. The job board is now closed. Yeah. So that was the very first sort of website for Flutter jobs, and it's closed down because now people post on LinkedIn. That there's many recruiters out there that are looking. I think LinkedIn is a great place to start. Update your portfolio on there. Update your profile. Get your thing known. Make sure
get the green thing that says available for work, or whatever it is. Looking for work, available for work, and put the word Flutter.
Yeah, I was going to say, take your avatar, crop it to put a circle thing on it, and then put like a little banner around the bottom in like a whatever picture editor you want. You know, Flutter dev ready for open for work, nice blue, green, whatever.
Well, they've got an open for work one, and when a recruiter searches by that, it lists them all. And when you put that you're open for work, it'll automatically do that.
But what I'm trying to say is you can do that, and then you can update your profile on like Twitter and everywhere else, and it's like really obvious that this thing. I've seen it recently. Who was doing it? Luke Pighetti was doing it for his live. So when he's live on Twitch, it changes his avatar on Twitter to say live. It's really good.
Wow.
It's really great thing. I really love it actually.
Luke
So,
comes up
anyway.
with all this stuff.
Yep.
Also
But-
about what you should learn, that.
Yeah.
And you don't need the whole thing to be employable. I figure the first, there's 4 stages to it. I figure the first 2, I believe.
I'll post that link in the chat for anyone that wants it. Yeah. All right. What was go back to the question? Well, we're a good place to find contracts and generally what skills are
We were just talking about that.
Yeah, but I mean, like, no, I'll just kind of just finish this off. Like you said, talking about skills. I mean, like, obviously, there's skills in terms of what a recruiter's looking for, and I think what you should do.
I mean, what libraries you should expect essentially to see if you go and see existing code, right?
Yeah.
So
go find the top 5 estate management packages.
yeah, and try to stay away from them. Because you're gonna find something else to actually work for you much better. But also, I think now it's like we are in a stage where the companies essentially want to put everything in a Flutter. So I've spent last year building an app which has so many integrations that I haven't done in any other native Android app in my life. Like seriously, so many third parties, and this is kind of hard thing to tackle, but be expected to essentially work with payment libraries and notification libraries and everything.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing that you forget is that that when you build a Flutter app, it's not just Flutter, right? So you talk about skills. I think you need to, as a developer, you definitely need to skill up on the native platforms you're working with. So if you're going to release an iOS app, you need to, have an iOS build machine available to you. You need to, try things out, understand the build process, debug the build process, work with pod files, all that kind of fun stuff. Same goes for Android. Work with Gradle files, build some just Android apps, and then how does that work with Flutter? Like explore those areas and know you're going to have to know some Android to build an Android app. It doesn't matter if Flutter or not. For the most part, most apps, most simple Flutter apps, they don't need any of that. But when you start going to what Swav's talking about, if you go corporate, they're going to want like some like payment system or analytics library or something. And if they don't have a Flutter package off the shelf, then you're going to have to build a plugin to work with it.
Be careful because sometimes you see, there is a Flutter plugin. Yeah, there is. Mm-hmm. And then you go for it and actually the provider says, don't use it, just use the web view. Right? Don't use this Flutter plugin because it's not updated or you have to write your own. So do your homework essentially to figure out what you're getting into in terms of integrations. That's the base. Is a takeaway I have right now. If you can stay away as much as possible from any platform-dependent code, that's great. If your app has a dedicated backend which can give you everything in RESTful, perfect. You don't need a platform code at all. And this means actually this reduces the friction and problem area for you. And you can find a contract and find very easy, do whatever,
Even if you're integrating that third party, it's so much better when that third party has a RESTful API because it just means you just don't have to deal with any native code. Just go straight into Dart, always in Dart, always in Flutter, and it just simplifies everything. All right. I think.
Let's see. We were talking about some crazy guy who actually put together a slide deck on a phone. And there he is.
Hey, Tomek.
Tomek, what's up, buddy? Let me get that down. Oh,
hey, how's it going?
So yeah,
pretty good. And it was not only for phone, it was desktop as well. So yes, everything in Flutter. Good old days.
I'm concerned. Are you the evil twin? Are you the right one? Have we got Tomek
Yes,
here? Or is it
really.
someone else?
Are we sure you're Tomek?
You should know.
Oh,
by
that's
now.
okay. Yeah, no, you're the ugly one. Okay. Yeah, it's Tomek. For those who don't know, Tomek is a twin.
Ah.
Hang on, Tomek, you need to get back in the community to do that. What was it?
Yeah.
Like if you can share this photo.
I don't. I have to find that picture. That's oh god. So when we took a picture once and had the fisheye lens, and Tomek was on the end side of the frame, and his bicep just went like 5 times larger, and it looked like he was working out.
No, like it was just like 10%, just 10%.
Oh yeah, just 10%. Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next.
But by the way, I see an AWS question coming up in the future. Sally will be here in 5 minutes or so.
Cool.
The app is targeting OnlyFans. I feel giving hard. Oh, this is a follow up from Sashka on the last one. I feel giving hard coded value seems wrong. We really need not to match the signal size.
Do you know how many sizes phone have?
No, that's what she's saying. Like she says, the app is only targeting phone. I feel giving hard coded value seems wrong. And it's correct. It doesn't matter if you're only targeting phones. The point here is phones have various little aspect ratios and sizes. Not just that, as we just said, with landscape and portrait, that's the thing. You really want to try and support landscape if you can. Obviously, not all apps suit landscape or the way that you use them, but for the most part, let the user decide on how they want to use your application, right?
And when doing Android development, this is a huge topic. I mean, they've got
DAP,
a whole bunch of different rating size ratings and all in there. What was it, XHDMI or something? And
I mean, well, you get all
crazy.
They've got there's it's not just was, it is. I mean, there's a lot of information on the. I recommend it for. Doesn't matter if you're putting a Flutter app on Android or iOS or whatever, but go read those information because it's not about Android specifically. Sure, like the way that they measure things, but the information about building mobile apps is generic. Doesn't matter what platform you're targeting.
Yep.
And to be honest, it also matters now on desktop. So desktops now have DPI scaling a lot of the time, and a lot of those facts now also carry on to desktop.
Dog is going out. But yeah, also with oh goodness. With Android, you have to do all of that and make different versions for various things. We're very spoiled in Flutter because since we're doing everything in logical pixels, a lot of that scales automatically. And sometimes we forget that it's not that easy in a lot of other frameworks.
Yeah, display independent pixels.
Oh.
This was the pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many. It's still, I mean, like it's what we deal with, like logical pixels, just display independent pixels. You have scalable pixels, which are like font scaled pixels. There's all sorts. All right, moving on.
Before we get in there, we got one more here. It's turning into a party. Solly.
Hey, I've been summoned.
What's up, buddy?
So I'm here.
The AWS question is a little ways down, so you can help us out with the others first.
Okay. Gotcha.
Figma sizes and Flutter sizes don't match. Why? What about it? Use screen util. They don't match because they're probably different sizes. I don't know what to say. Like as we just said, like you display independent versus pixels. Is that what he's talking about?
Like maybe the pixel density is different. That's the thing. That this screen, how it looks on the phone, is not how the.
Well, this is it. Like if a designer designs something, let's say for an iPhone at a certain aspect ratio, then you try and put that on a different device with a different aspect ratio. Well, it's going to look different. You've got more pixels, right? And the same goes if they've designed it for what's it called, single density iPhone, like 1x, and then there's actually a double density iPhone, and it's not the same screen aspect ratio. So again, it throws it off. The sizes should not be 1-to-1. It should look and feel the same. That's the difference. So a lot of the job of a developer is to interpret the designs and make them into the app.
Now there are two catches I can see here. Number one, if you try to use the numbers off of Figma, who's to say those were density independent pixels, right? Who's to say they were logical pixels? I don't think so. But the other thing too is, what if you try to use golden tests, right? If you try to use goldens, and use images off of Figma, and they're in a different pixel density, is that going to blow up?
I mean,
definitely rendering from Figma will be different.
Is this the package? Is this the package that he's talking about here? Screen util, a Flutter plugin for adapting the adaptive screen and font size lets your UI display a reasonable layout on different screen sizes. This just smells bad.
This is what responsive design is all about.
I mean, what is it that's special here? Screen util init screen. Oh, look, design size, minimum text, adaptation, split screen. Basically, it scales the text size, changes the font. It probably changes the font scale factor and some other things.
Oh God. No.
To be honest, anything. Oh, look, there you go. Look, 45 SP, 30 SP. I mean, look, if it works for you, great. Like, sure. But to be honest, no.
Anything that touches okay, wait a minute. Bottom one right there. Text keep going up. Move your cursor back up.
What?
Oh, just your cursor, not the page. Okay, but now you need to scroll back up. Okay, bottom of that paragraph you're pointing at right there. Text scale factor. Anything that changes your text scale factor, run away. Because that's your user's accessibility. And now you're messing with the font size that they have selected in their settings because they have bad eyesight. You start playing around with that, they can't read your stuff.
Here's the thing. I don't know if there's any. I mean, maybe this. I've never used this, so I couldn't talk to it, right? But definitely, like, here's the thing, right? When I zoom in, right, there's a point. Look, the side menu disappeared on the website, and now I have like this little toggle thing that brings out the side menu. This is a responsive design, right? It doesn't just make the text bigger, right? Like I'm zooming in, zooming out, and layout will change, and to make things more appropriate for that screen size.
If we only had someone on the stream who had written an article about accessibility and text sizes and things like that, Sally, who just went away.
No, I did it on purpose. I mean, I want to say one thing about Figma though. I mean, I had the same problem this person mentioned, and I thought the same as you did, Simon, but when I compared in the same device template that they use, still it was a bit different. I thought it was because of like how Flutter renders the text, so I didn't put too much meaning into it. I just made it look like what we had on design, but
So with the text, it's another thing that essentially how the text engine is treated in Flutter. And I remember a long time ago I think it was on the Leaky project, Luca Leaf was working with a designer very closely to figure out where this thing changes. But this actually wasn't Figma, it was Zeppelin, I think they were using. Essentially the export was doing something to the numbers, which were then incorrectly reflected on the page, and they had to essentially write their own transformator, which was transforming the styles exported from Zeppelin to actually match it, and then it was matching. Interestingly,
there was I have seen this as well. I have seen some of the utilities, they export the font size as the line height, including like the descent. So it's the ascent and descent giving the line height, and you have like the line gap or spacing. Or the leading, it's also called, and you get kind of like that. It's the full height, or it's just the ascent going upwards. Is the font height? Like there's different ways of calculating these things, and then also they can be specified in different things like point sizes versus logical pixel sizes versus pixel sizes. So it to convert between these different things can become complicated as well. I think this is practiced. The idea here is if it looks the same, it is the same. Doesn't matter if the numbers are different.
But the thing is, if you have plenty of designs made by some very productive designer who just shuffles this thing, and you have 70 screens that you have to transform, I would look essentially for transformer. Essentially, I would write a transformer which scales this to the point that it looks like in the design. So I take the picture and get a screenshot of from Figma and put it as a half translucent on my screen when I'm displaying widgets, and essentially I'm playing with it and say, okay, and I'm multiplying this text size and multiplying until I get it roughly. It is there. It won't be 100% pixel perfect, but it'll be very close, and it's super close. Once you have this transformer, you just run through everything and just go to your designer and say, is this all right? Yes. And get approval from him. So you don't have to do it again. Yeah. And that's it, you're done. Essentially, if this is like a large project, then I would be compelled to actually write some generation tool, transformer tool, whatever, to do it.
A real quick one, Nicholas Mendoza, you forgot the Q, but actually we already answered that. I will put the link to the highly subjective roadmap in the chat here in just a moment. But in the meantime,
Matthias,
I'm using GetX. I'm sorry, Get It. My bad. Sorry, Thomas. I'm using Get It for dependency injection on Flutter Web. After a page refresh, all the lazy singletons are getting reset. Do you know by chance if this is expected behavior or how I can avoid that?
Well, so first of all, that's expected behavior. You're reloading the web page. So you're reloading all your code, so it's going to redo everything. So yeah, there's no, I mean, I don't know why. I think the key thing here is to understand. I think you need to follow this up with a question about explain what you're trying to achieve here, because page refresh is supposed to refresh the page. It's supposed to reset everything. You're loading it all again. So that's completely expected behavior. And you're saying how can you avoid it? But why would you want to avoid it? What are you doing that you're trying to avoid resetting? Right? Because it sounds to me like there's something else going on there that you're trying to solve. Like maybe you're trying to load the data and you're loading the data twice, or you can use your local storage in the browser to cache that data, so you don't load it twice. It doesn't matter if you refresh; the data's still there. Things like that. Like there's alternatives to solving possibly your problem here. I need to use data. There you go. So the way you do that on a browser is either cookie, or a cookie is just like a key value pair. And what you can do is inside your value, you can take a piece of JSON, and base64 encode it or something like that, and just chuck it in there. Probably not that, but there's other ways. You can also encrypt it with a fixed key, so that it's just not plain text. And then that fixed key is shipped by your app. It's not necessarily secure in that way, but it stops people from sniffing the cookies, right? The other one is just local storage. Local storage is actually straight inside Flutter. So inside of Flutter thing. So if you go to api.flutter.dev, actually I'll do it on api.dev, because that'll give you over here, let's see, .html. And if we look in here for local storage, but on the window object, so you just do inside of Dart, you just do window.local storage, and that'll give you an instance of storage. And you can see here there's other actual guides on how you use it. But inside storage, there you go. You just have key value pairs. You can just set a key with a value. Now this value you can set to a JSON string. So you take your configuration object or your user object to JSON, and then run it through JSON.encode, so you get string, chuck it in there as user object, user model, something like that. And when your app starts up, you say, does it contain this key? And it's a map. It acts like a map. Does the local storage contain this key? Yes, it does. User, great. Decode the JSON, load the user's local state into your Dart code. So that's what I'd recommend. That's nice and simple, keeps it working, and it's just a couple of lines, right? If you're trying to compile your code on non-web, then probably what you'll want to do is use what they call conditional imports. And that allows you to say, okay, if it's not on web, then make a function that returns a dummy value, or uses like does shared preferences work on web? I think it does, doesn't it? I think it actually uses local storage.
It does.
So you could probably use the shared preferences plugin to store your state, and then that would store with local storage on web. There you go. Alrighty. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I agree.
Alrighty. I hear Swav might have something to say about this next one. what's your preferred CI/CD service, and are there remote Android device services that you're happy with? I'm sorry, to use with Flutter. Android device services?
So
why don't-
testing,
Swav, why
like
don't
a
you start?
testing.
A test lab.
Yeah, so Tesla was one, but my preferred CI/CD is GitHub Actions. I just love it.
Yeah,
so
same here.
Yeah, so you write essentially your CI/CD as a code, and you configure it as a code, as an action, and you can use some other tools like Fastlane or whatever, but you have a full control of it. The coolest part about it is that you can plug your own machine as a worker for your GitHub Actions. So essentially, you're pushing your code to the GitHub, and then automatically the tests are built. Everything is built, but it's built on your machine, which works as a worker. So you have a full control of it, and you don't have to pay for it, right? So that's what I am. And for the last project that we did together, it was Code Magic all the year, and now we switched to GitHub Actions because of money. Essentially, it costs less to run it this way. If you have a very quite substantial team which commits a lot, and you have a release process which is makes a lot of releases, and you're releasing your app in many versions that you have to build, then you start to feel the pain that actually these kind of groovy looking CI/CDs are becoming too expensive, and you want to cut this down.
Well, yeah, but don't forget, Martin's got to have some kind of income to write those checks that he writes to support the community. So Code Magic does a lot to support the community.
So this is what I'm saying. We run whole year on Code Magic. Yep. Right, whole year on Code Magic. So this, and then we realize, okay, now we know cheap. we have 4 apps released and 2 environments, and all goes with one pipeline. It takes a long time, and we cannot commit enough money to actually run more, and we have to find something else. And this is where I am, and that's where I am with it. So
sometimes there's actually I found it used for GitHub Actions before. Actually, with GitLab as well. GitLab has a similar thing, but hosting your own. So actually, this was Mac Stadium. So getting a hosted Mac, server, essentially running the GitHub Actions, CI configurator on there, and then you can then use your GitHub Actions on a Mac Stadium instance, and it means that you can then have. If you have private repos and things, you're not using the publicly supplied, Mac machines. You can have it all running. Depending on what you're trying to build, there's regulations. So you can still have it private, essentially, right? There's lots of options with GitHub Actions, which is quite nice. I think you can actually configure GitHub. I mean, you can. There's no reason why you couldn't configure GitHub Actions to actually fire off and use Code Magic to do your deployments and stuff like that.
And we did speaking that. I mean, Code Magic specializes in Flutter. And also, let's not forget, Sully and I know some other people. If you want the super simple CI/CD, it's not as customizable as the others. But if you want to be up and running fast and make it easy, check out App Circle. Because when I was doing some DevRel for them, I literally made a video where I went from nothing and went through creating an account all the way through running my first build in under 6 minutes. So, but then again, you don't have all the control that you have with other things.
That's a trade-off.
But you don't have to struggle with it.
Yeah, so that's the trade-off. So if you're starting the project, you have to have it quick. You go Code Magic, and in 5 minutes, you are building something. In 15 minutes, you are able... You are able, but with Code Magic you could probably do the similar, and in 15 minutes you have a push to, let's say, the Apple console and whatever, maybe half an hour with putting all this. But then after a while you start to increase your appetite, and you want to have different flavors. you want to have some automation run,
Mm.
and then you start to think, I need to do something. And it takes more time. Now your build is like half an hour.
I was going to say 45-minute iOS build times and stuff like that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I want to mention it. What was it? Oh, now I forgot. It doesn't matter. It's gone. Let's move on. Next
Well,
question.
one thing I want to point out real quick is we did mention we're trying to keep the scope creep down so that we're not here for 2.5 hours. It is now 10 minutes before an hour. We're hoping to do some live coding, and we have about 35 to 40 minutes worth of questions in the queue. So we're already looking. If we do live coding, that's going to be 2 hours. So we really need to cut the questions after Steph.
Right.
This question, I think.
What was it? Can you just read it off? I'm not a developer and professional. I learned Flutter purely from internet. I like to know what is the best online course for gaining paper qualifications. So I'd like to switch my job in the future. I don't know of any official paper qualifications for
But
Flutter.
be advised that actually, I remember Flutter team people, I think it was still Chris Sells or Nilay was actually mentioning that they thinking about getting something out like that.
They were talking about it, but also even before that, when Matt Sullivan was there, he and I had a conversation about this. And his first question was, who to judge, right? Who's going to make the decision about what is needed for a certification? And, how are you going to do it? Or is there going to be a test? Who's going to pay for the test?
Yeah. So the problem is this, that unlike other technologies, this technology changes so fast that you can't actually, remember all the state, all the state management frameworks that you work so far on it. And how would you certify this? You can't, because essentially the target is moving so fast. So, with the changes which are proposed for, Dart 3, you'll have a lot of other tools. They won't be in this certification. And
there's another interesting one. Which packages? Can you be certified without knowing Block and Riverpod? Should you be? But those aren't in the framework. Dog. So yeah, there are 1,000 questions about that. But outside of a paper certification, once again, scroll up in the chat. I'll post it one more time. Alexander Lushenko put together a list of great things to learn. And also, don't forget, there's the London App Breweries course, Flutter Bootcamp with Dart, I believe it is. The Flutter team put up money to help them develop that course. And since they subsidized it, it's only $10 US. So you can't beat it. And if I understand right, it has been updated.
I mean,
so
one thing that I can say is that I wouldn't put too much meaning into the paper qualifications. If you want to have a qualification proof as a software developer, just contribute to the open source projects or have open source libraries that people can take a look into.
That's the better badge than anything else. Yeah.
There's no I mean, for example, back in the days, I don't know if it still exists, but I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, I did this Android qualification course. They had some questions and everything, but at the end of the day, did I see any effect of it on my career? I would say no. I would recommend, just being an open source person, being a community member. If you want to show you can do something. Other way around, the paper stuff is just you can also print it at home. So I do not believe in those.
I mean, definitely any course you're gonna find out around, we're gonna have a nice printed certificate on the finishing of it, and that's about it. There's no official certification as far, and it's very difficult to make one because Flutter is changing so rapidly. It's gonna be completely devolved. And yeah, I remember this. It was this Android University or whatever it was called back in the day. And actually, my son Jack was doing it. And every time he was almost about to finish it, they actually updated the content and then changed it because Android moves so far. And Flutter moves faster than Android, okay? So now imagine this.
man.
Yeah. So
I'll tell
imagine
you what,
now
if you
trying
want
to
to
do
see
the
how
course
fast
when you're
Flutter
finished.
moves.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So
If you want to see how fast Flutter moves, look in 3 weeks, 21 days. They're going to be streaming from Kenya, from Nairobi, and take a look at how fast things move then.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of cool stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. I'm going to start a new job as a Flutter developer.
Sorry, just before we jump onto another question, I just want to show people to actually Andrea Bizzotto has done a really great course with Andrea. He's done.
There are a number of them, but yeah, Andrea's one of the best out there.
He's done some really good complete Dart course, developer guide course. The complete Flutter course bundle covers a lot of content. It's a paid for course, but he's done a lot of work on these, and they're great. It's great content. So
worth it.
Yeah.
Be sure to post that link also in the chat, Simon.
Doing that now.
And hi, I will start a new job as a Flutter developer. I'm a bit nervous and wonder if you guys have any tips. Thank you. The first tip, really, and I'm totally serious, if you don't already know your way around a Kanban board, learn it fast. Because that's how they're organizing the whole team. And if you can't be involved and if you can't follow the way things are organized, it doesn't matter if you're the greatest Flutter developer in the world.
Is this the first developer job or first Flutter developer job? Because Flutter, I would say first thing, ask questions, because Flutter is very diverse, I would say, community in terms of approaching the code base. And you may find essentially a lot of different strange things in your code, depending on how old the project is. And this means you have to adjust. So don't be afraid to ask questions. So, guys, why you have these things here? Why are they final here?
I've got a question to ask everyone here. That's on the call. How many has there ever been a project that you've just joined and you haven't had to ask any questions about any of the code? Like, you have to, there's always there's documentation, you have to read it. Like they don't expect you to suddenly come into a project and go, oh, it's it, dive straight in and know exactly what to change, where to change it, how to make it work, right?
This is not a TV show. In reality,
unfortunately, I have seen people do that.
You have to understand the structure and learn things, right? And so I wouldn't say don't be nervous. Like if you have any questions, ask the people involved, right? What are you using here? Why are you using this? If they can't answer it, then you have to figure it out, right? But that's the job.
Also, if they get snotty about asking questions, you're in the wrong place. And fortunately, there are lots of Flutter jobs right now.
I mean, don't one thing that I say to the people all the time is that it doesn't matter what level they're at. People have tendency to hold back their questions because they think it's easy, stupid, whatever you want to call, but there's no such thing. I would just recommend, just asking away your questions. And if someone is having trouble with your questions, problem is not with you, it's their problem. So you just need to embrace the fact that those people cannot deal with the people, and what you do is the correct way to go.
Is there a too stupid question in Flutter? I don't think so.
One other thing, though, a general tip. A general tip is try to understand how the thing you're working on fits into the rest of the project, and make sure you talk to the people who are working on things that are going to be using the thing you're making. Like if you're making a page, if you're making widgets.
I think, this is a great idea, because one of the benefits of Flutter is that you have the results pretty fast, which means you have them, pretty quick. You get this thing and just, turn your laptop and you show this to the designer, and you find out that actually this is not what he wanted. And you actually saved half a day of writing tickets or whatever, just because you have a Flutter that can show the result very quick. So be communicative as possible. Cut essentially the time between these handovers from design to development to testing, and so on. If you're being a part of the team, no one will have any quarrels with you. Right? Seriously.
I mean,
And
I want
one
to
other-
go back
ahead,
to
Sally.
one thing that Swav mentioned, because I mean, we are joking around here, but for the folks who doesn't know us, I want to repeat that there is no such thing as stupid question. There might be easier questions for other folks, but that doesn't make them stupid. It just means that we know them, but you might not. So just ask your questions all the time. This is what I wanted to emphasize one more time.
If the current team don't have the answer to your question, then you have to go find it for yourself, or it should be documented. And then once you've worked it out, document it on the project, right? Update the comments in the code, write it in the README, the wiki, whatever it is, and get it there. So the next person that comes along that has that same question has the answer, right?
And something that might be a little bit more Flutter specific, if you're working on a widget or something that's going to go in something else, find out what that something else is and how it's working. And what I mean by that is, if you create something that doesn't have any constraints because you're depending on the parent to provide them, and the parent isn't providing them, then when you take that other person's work and your work and you put them together, it's not going to work.
I mean, like most things, like debugging can take some time. You need to use the tools, use the dev tools, and you work through all these kind of issues. All right. Anyway, let's carry on, because we've got plenty of questions to get through here.
Is there any live coding? We hope so.
I mean, I could start doing that now if you want. And let's carry on with this. And
We've
get
got
through those
12 questions left, and we figure if we do 2 minutes per question, that's going to be 25 minutes.
Well, let's do
Has
it quicker.
anyone experienced using ChatGPT to serve as Flutter coding assistant? I will not say anything that will get me in trouble.
I have to say, there's actually I watched a great video about ChatGPT quite recently, actually, but it was I'll put it's another YouTube link. I won't click on it now because it'll take you away from the video. I'll pop it in the chat for everyone. It's a programmer called Biscuit is his name. Anyway, he talks about he puts some math problems to ChatGPT, and the result that it comes out with, you would think is right. If you read it, it's very authoritatively spoken. You'd go, oh, it's this, because it says the answer is this. It's that kind of, obviously explains it a bit more, but the explanation is just plain wrong, right? And the actual maths don't work out. So the end of the day is ChatGPT will give you some answers, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are the correct answers. And this goes with the code as well. We've seen it generate some really nice code, but then it can also get things terribly, terribly wrong. So I think the answer is ChatGPT is great if you know the answer, so you can validate, that it's correct, right? So I think, if you want something creative, I think there's an example on the homepage, give me the top 10 birthday party ideas for a 10-year-old. That's something that's subjective that you could just read. That's not factual. That would work. But for coding, yeah, I think it's like, I think if anyone's used what's the one that GitHub does? What's the coding assistant that GitHub has? Copilot. It's going to be the same thing. It can be great. You can put a little comment down, give me a loop that does this, and this, or it gives you a suggestion. But you have to go in there and modify it, right? So. Yeah, I don't. Even with it getting better and better, I don't see it. You still have to direct it. It's not intelligent in that way, right? I don't know. What does anyone think about ChatGPT while we're here? Any comment?
No. I am trying.
I don't think it will replace us anytime soon, and you cannot do TDD with it.
Yeah.
Can I do what?
By then, Simon will be rich anyway, and we will be working for him, so it's fine.
Well, you know what? If nothing else, they need somebody to do the code reviews. So you'll go from writing it to reviewing it, and then
Can you just imagine
refactoring
that?
it. So you're writing it
Imagine that.
anyway.
A future job, and your job is reviewing AI automated code generation code. That's literally your day is just spending reviewing code generated by AI. That would be so boring. All right, next question.
Before we
How
move
can we keep
forward,
a transparent background with image segmentation human body mask? What?
I've got
way
I've got an image
beyond.
mask.
okay,
I've
sorry
got-
guys, I need to jump off.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for that AWS question real quick.
Where'd it go?
Where did it
We've
go?
gone through all those questions, surely.
Well, you go ahead with the questions. In
Yeah.
front of us
Well,
while
I
I'm
was
looking.
gonna say, so this basically the person's trying to, from what I gather from this, they're trying to display the human body in segments, and the images that they're displaying aren't transparent, but they need to cut them out and make them transparent. What they have is what's called a mask, which is a black and white image. This is how you deal with sprites from the olden days, as it were. It's quite still used now, but you have a black and white image which gives you transparency, what should be transparent, what should not be transparent. And then your other bit gives you your actual pixel colors, and you take the two together, and it means you cut out the image and show it. That's what's called a mask. You're masking off the area you want to keep. So simple thing. 2 ways I think you could do this is you can use an image widget, and you can wrap it in a Shading mask widget, and inside that you can return back an image. You create image and paint with a shader set to that image. And then you can set the blend mode to one of the probably source of destination ones. I'm sticking destination on top, destination at top, but I could be wrong. If you go look at the blend mode enum in the API documentation for Flutter, you can see images and you can see which one you need. But basically, you want to use the color of one as the transparency for the other, and there is actually a blend mode for that. And there you go. And that would do it. I'm not sure if it's probably the best way. I would suggest that you probably, I don't know what the resolution of these images are, but I would suggest you pre-process these and not use them in this way, because it's a lot easier just to load an image with transparency than it is to like do that at runtime whilst the widgets are being rendered. Because you only have to do it once when it's loaded, and then instead of doing it on every frame, essentially. So
I am looking for the AWS question. If you asked it, please mention that again in chat.
our question magician surely can find it.
And I'm
Right.
also looking, somebody was thinking their question was skipped. I am not finding that one either, but if you put a link in your question, it's not going to show.
Yeah.
YouTube will intercept it and not put it up.
Messages with links.
Actually, we won't see it.
Yeah. A web queue's not really Flutter, but web question, not really Flutter. I'm trying to do what I am trying to do in Flutter. This is without context. Like what? But I'm trying to do it.
the answer is yes. Yes.
Yes. Is this in relating to the previous question? We need context. If it's gone. Sorry.
And I finally found it, Sully. Actually, it
Oh,
was a comment, not a question.
Oh,
I hope it's a good one. If not, I can live with it.
But thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if that person who has a comment, if it's bad, I'm just kidding. You can reach out to me over like Slack, any other platforms, and just direct me your comment, and let's see if we can fix the problem that you're having.
And there it is, Sully
Yeah.
Guler. So write
That's
that
me.
down real quick before we put the question back up again.
Yours truly. Okay, yeah, thank you very much, guys. Probably I will stop by later on again
Yeah.
just to answer.
All right,
further
buddy.
questions.
Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, take care and hope to meet you all soon. Bye bye.
so anyone notice weird visual distortion when switching from portrait to landscape? Can it be avoided? You will always. So this is particularly. I know you'll see this on Android, and it can be avoided. what happens is the actual image that is your content of your display, when you rotate, is just stretched out while it repaints the next thing, and it's part of the animation. However, the rotation animation on Android can be updated to not do that. I forget there's a parameter. I was just looking for it. There is actually a parameter for your activity somewhere, or a setting. I know. I remember they added this. For the life of me, I can't remember what it was called. But if you go look up, I'm sure if you go look up like rotation, orientation, activity, something like that, I'm sure you'll go find it. It actually waits for the frame before doing the rotation. For the life of me, I'm not seeing it here. Yeah, no, it's gone. I'm pretty sure I remember there's something for this. So the answer is, I believe there is a solution. I can't seem to locate it now. I'm just like Googling around quickly. If this is an iOS question, I've never seen that before, but I couldn't tell you if it does or doesn't do it.
I wonder if this is also related to the Android essentially changing the activities.
Sorry, say
because long time ago there was a problem with Android when Android was essentially killing off and starting activity in a different orientation.
That's what's happening. No, that's exactly what's happening here. You check your activity in your Android manifest. It has config changes for orientation. It should have all the config changes in there possible, because we want to keep the activity alive no matter what the config change is. It could be that you've missed out this thing, or you've updated the code, the activity in the manifest in some way and removed this. But without the config change, it restarts and you get that animation occurring. So me and Scott many years ago did a rotation, smooth rotation package. Remember that?
I updated it for null safety, but the problem is that it depends on a package called Irium sensors, and I don't believe that has been updated for changes in Android, so it was failing.
Well, anyway, the non-safe one I've just popped in the chat here, but that let's see if I can share this. Share screen. I think that's right. We'll find out. Yes, a smooth rotation, but this actually does some nice, cool things on rotation, so it keeps it around, and this keeps the activity going. I remember, and I think this just does so it just does. This is quite old, by the way, but it's just like you should have basically. There's more than this now. You should just have every single one of the config changes in here. If you load up your Android subfolder in Android Studio, it'll give you the IntelliSense, and it will suggest to add things. So just add them all, and you should be fine. But Harvick's are very true. And orientation should be all and you'll need the screen size and screen layout ones for sure. But it shouldn't jump around too much or do anything like that. But hopefully that solves your problem. Right. I guess moving on. Next question. Shashka. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying. So you suggest not using such packages. Say for fonts, let's say headlines use 20 in Figma, should it be 20 in Flutter if we package 20 SP?
No. So you should actually calculate it. You have to calculate how much we're gonna essentially match it, and then write your equation and modify the code once it's exported. That's it.
So
at the risk of putting up something wrong, here's a Stack Overflow question on it.
Well, the point here is 20 in Figma. I don't know what they're measuring as. If it's 20 pixels in Flutter, 20 for a font size is not 20 pixels, right? It's 20 logical pixels that are scaled to the user's font size on their phone. And this is the point. You don't want to match it to Figma, because here's the point, Cheska. Let's say, and I want you to try this. Go into any app. Let's say Twitter, whatever. Go into an app. Then go into your phone settings and go to accessibility font size and change it up to extra large. Then go back to Twitter and see how it changed, right? They might have removed headings because they're now too big. They might have made the headings so they don't go too big, but the text of all the posts is bigger. Like these are things that change because of the behavior, right? You don't expect it to match the 20 that's in Figma at that point, right? So it might be that on your phone, you've got it set to really, really small as your preference. Therefore, on your phone, it comes up really, really small. But for the tester's phone, it's really, really big because they've got their preference set up higher.
Part two.
So,
And can I elaborate one thing? So in my project, some other developer, there was problems with this scaling. So it was text was getting cut. And as a fix, he forced the full scaling to 1. Good that that person doesn't work anymore because I would strangle. So never do
You
that.
will very quickly end up in the uninstalled zone if anyone has made their text a little bigger.
There's reasons. Don't get me wrong. Like there's reasons to force the text size to fit, which is more like a fitted box, which is like a display thing. But the actual, you should not be overriding your text scale factor anywhere in your UI, preferably. It just there's no good reason to do that.
No.
Right, go
on. Let's see here.
Next one.
Can
Okay,
I
so he's
spin
come
up
back
a
with the question.
local server in the WASM runtime and use Node.js libraries?
He said it's. I mean, sure, you could do that.
Is it?
I mean, I don't know why you'd want to, but WASM interoperates with JS. I don't see a reason why you couldn't do that. I mean,
second part of the same thing.
Yeah. The point is, Node.js is server side. You cannot run it in the browser. So the answer to that is normally no. But a lot of NPM packages and stuff don't require Node, specifically the Node.js only packages. So that's normally okay. But WASM interoperates with JavaScript. And that's what you need to be looking at there. But there's no reason why you couldn't, like, so the question is spin up a local server. I mean, you could spin up a local server on the machine that hosts your Flutter web app that uses the WASM runtime on the background JS. And then I don't know, why not just use Dart on the backend? Dart can interoperate with with JS libraries just fine. And then you can compile it using the WASM runtime, right? I mean, I don't know. Sure.
Okay, next one, real quick. How to deploy Python code in a Flutter app. I need to deploy some better.
So
you get your foot, you get your gun, and then you shoot your foot.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. I'm saying, okay, how do I write a web page in COBOL?
Scott, let me, because there was conversation about that, because that person wants, for example, some image processing library, which is in Python, to use in Flutter. So there was there is a like Dart Py, which uses FFI with some that actually uses Python's CAPI embedding. So it's possible to read a file in Python as a string and put it to this FFI library, but it might be painful for big application, like big libraries.
I mean, I was going to say the thing is, I was going to say you can compile, if you can, I think you can compile Python code, right? To compile code. I think there's a way of doing that. I'm not sure if does it need a runtime as well? I don't know. But yeah, if you could do that, then you can use the FFI libraries. But
another possibility is
C embedding.
Why don't try going on the Discord or on the Flutter community Slack and asking if anybody would be interested in creating a Dart package that could do the same thing if it doesn't already exist. This
is interesting. So it calls Python code by using the C API embedding with Dart FFI. So yeah, initialize your Py environment, take your Python code, send it over to the Python runtime, and it will run that code, I guess. And then finalize and free it. I mean, sure, it's just I'm now shipping the source code. It's not really meant for I haven't seen it here, right? Maybe you can load and import. It's got py import. I don't know.
This looks like this Ouroboros thing, right? That you write the code, which writes the code in a different language, which is write the code in another language. Yeah, I'm laughing because you need to have a good reason for this, because Flutter and Dart are very good friends with themselves, just themselves. That's it, right? Everything else, it's not the idea of Flutter and Dart to be good with Kotlin, to be good with JavaScript, to be good with any other language. They're designed to work standalone, so you don't have to learn the other languages. That's the whole idea.
But the problem is not like somebody wants to write a Python application. They want to use existing like machine learning where Python shines. And
so the thing is, the thing is, the problem here is, I think, is that Python is not a language meant for this, right? What I would suggest the person does, I don't remember who was asking this question now, but what I would suggest you do is you train your model in Python on your desktop, whatever it is, you output your model, like in a TensorFlow Lite model, for example, then you ship that TensorFlow Lite model as part of your application, then use the TensorFlow Lite package to load it and use that to process images. That is what it's there for. That's how you're supposed to use these things. Like, you're not running your Python code. You're not training your model on your device, right? And the examples they've got in Python to run the model is just that. You're running the model. I don't think I would ever want to run any sort of that stuff on device. It's just, it wouldn't be performant at all. The TF Lite stuff, by the way, will also take advantage of if the phone has some of the new AI processors, then the TensorFlow Lite package will actually call out to those neural net processors, whatever they're called. So you got the TF Lite package, and there's also Flutter TF Lite, and a few of them. I think the Flutter one here. Come on, it won't load. Of course, it won't load. When I want it to, it won't load. But the Flutter TF Lite one has a function. Oh, it doesn't load any quicker. I'm not sure. Anyway, down here you'll find that it's got a method like you got load model, which loads your TF Lite model, and then the run model on image, and then you get whatever the output data structure is. You get that back out basically. So you can put your parameters in. So yeah, that's the whole point, right? Like, detect objects on image. It runs on different types of model. You can go read up on it. I'm not going to explain it here. That's what I would go with what we're trying to do. All right, next question.
Another one, I'm not quite sure what they mean or if they even should be doing this. They've been using Flutter Form Builder for data input. What would you use for a simple data form input with auto and custom validation? Now here's the part I don't understand. I find it is a bit tightly coupled to Flutter, so no Dart only testing. I mean, I would just use a form and text input, and
so because forms send all the information between the widgets that are validated, so via context, right? You inherited widget. So if you want to try to use it without it, like say, I'm going to write a river pod app, right? And you have a form in it, then still you have to compensate for the fact that actually the form validation, either you're going to figure out how to do it manually and essentially do it elsewhere apart from the normal form validation, right? Or you're going to use the forms. Yeah, forms are coupled, unfortunately, and it's a pain.
You can decouple that, right? Like,
yeah, you can do it.
So you can have like the output of your form creates a model object, for example, that has all your fields and whatever they've entered in, and then you can have a validate function on that, right? And that does like a global validation. But you could equally have a validate function on there that calls for validating the field of the model, and then on save. So you do like on the form object you have save, and then you actually have an unsaved callback on all the fields. You can update your model, do a copy with whatever, however you want to do it, and then the validator can actually look at that model and call the validate function. Now what you've done is you've made a UI that interacts with your business model of, here's my model object, here's my functions that do the validation, and over here is the actual UI widgets. And you've done that, you've made that separation. You don't need any library to do this. yeah. I mean, I'm sure yeah. I've never used any form building library. Just use the Flutter widgets, and if the widget doesn't exist, then you just extend form field and do it yourself. Done.
Yeah. Okay. Some slight addition from Paco. Using pre-commit hook. Are there any pre-commit hooks that you like to use?
Oh, Swav, you know about pre-commit hooks.
That's actually that's not my expertise. That's Pantelis. Pantelis did quite awesome. Yeah, he did quite awesome things like lint checks, and what else he did? Oh, checking if your generated code is updated. Also, he did that yeah, maybe I'm gonna ask Pantelis to do the talk on it, because this is something, these are the things which really save time and are really useful. There's a lot of improvements that don't really save time. They are just fancy things that you run once on the project and that's it. But this thing you're gonna run every time you do the commit, which is, so yeah, maybe yeah. I don't know myself. I haven't actually dig into it, but definitely we had some like lint checks, formatting, and regenerating all the build runner build classes. And
all right. Next question then.
Alrighty. How to connect native iOS side to Flutter side without using platform and method channels? Smoke signals?
So to access an SQLite database native side and view it on the Flutter side app. So you can just use the SQL. There's SQLite FFI bindings that already exist inside of pub.dev. I can't remember which package it is. So you can just access the database directly. There you go. Just give it the file path and away you go. That's one way of doing it. I'd also say that you can actually you can now use FFI to call out to Objective-C and Swift code directly. So now you can just make those without the method channel. So you can actually make those calls without the method channel.
Simon, quick question here, because if you use FFI to access that database, isn't it already like sandboxed? Will you have access like that?
I'd say if you've got a file path, if you can access it in that way, then sure. And the other one is, as I said, you could always again, like if they're accessing it right now with method channels, then they can access it without method channels.
I mean, the database is effectively a file on your system, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have a permission to write to this file, read and write. If you do, this means that by extension, the Flutter app should be able to get this access.
It's normally inside your sandbox environment for your application, right? However, I don't know about what's it called, core data, which runs an SQLite database underneath. I don't know if that's like hidden away from you, that you can't access the raw database or not, and that's what you're trying to do. I don't know for certain, but you can definitely even if there's no package. Let's say I'm wrong. There's no package on for SQLite. You can just compile the single SQLite file into C and into a dynamic library with a simple one-line make file, and access those functions with Dart using FFI gen, for example. You can do it basically. So yeah, if you haven't heard of it, it's called Foreign Function Interface, FFI. There's plenty of information online about Dart FFI, and I can't remember what most recent Dart version. I can't remember which one it was. They opened up FFI to actually call Objective-C and compile Swift code, basically. So, if I remember rightly, I know definitely Objective-C. Pretty sure Swift code as well. All right, next question. Steph, can you recommend a package to have an app that can read and update a device calendar?
The first thing I can think of is if the calendar is contained in the storage section of another app, it's not going to let you go after that for security reason.
No, there's a device calendar. So both there's so on Android, I'm going to bring this up on stream. Oh, do we lose Tomic? There's a calendar, what's called a calendar provider. And I'm sure there's probably a package that wraps this, but basically there's contracts that let you access events and update things, and you obviously have to get the permission to read and write the calendar, and you can do them. But basically, I don't think I've ever looked at any specific library that accesses the provider on Android. Again, obviously cross-platform. Well, I don't know what this is on iOS, but I know on Android you can just simply do this kind of code where you update the calendar's display name, or you want to like add, insert, stuff into the calendar. There's insert an event and what the fields are. It's all described.
But, yeah, working with a provider is a bit of a pain, so it's a bit of a learning curve to do that, because you treat them a bit like a database. You have queries and responses. It's all asynchronous. You have to remember this is a different process which runs in a different essentially part of your system, because it's allocated memory and some cognitive power to actually do something, and you're just sending messages by brewing some intents and stuff like that. So it's not that easy. So if someone wrap it in a plugin, they're great, but I haven't seen it.
Here's a great idea for someone else, because I'm looking here and I'm not seeing anything immediately on the first few pages here. A lot of these are like calendar widgets and things like that, but that's not the same as accessing calendar data from the device. So I've posted this link in the chat. Basically, this is add an event, and then you must include this, how you do it, blah, blah, blah. And then it explains here, you build up content values with the key and value fields, and you go insert into the content resolve. And this is like basically running like an insert command on a database, basically. And then you get back the ID. You actually get back normally a URI, which is a content URI. And then the last path I'm here, in this case, is the event ID that you can then return back and store, or I don't know, lots of stuff. I'm sure you can have fun.
And then also there will be a very funny thing about permissions, right? Because you need to have a permissions to actually write into your calendar or read it from it.
Yeah. So there's a read and write calendar permission. You can actually use the permissions package in Pub to actually request those permissions. And they are, as I said, they are in the documentation we're just looking at. So it's actually here, read and write calendar. You don't add them like this anymore. You request them at runtime. So when someone goes to just say, add this event to my calendar as a button in your Flutter app, when they tap on that button, then it requests the permission. If it gets the right permission, right calendar permission, use the permissions package, then you can then go ahead and, to be honest, if it's just like a one-off task like that, like add an event to a calendar, you could just quickly write a method channel and just do a little bit of native code, which is 10-line function that just does that one thing. Hope that helps.
Alrighty. And then there was one. When I use draggable scroll bar sheet in Google Maps, the sheet is updating every scrolling frame.
When I use draggable scrollable sheet in Google Map, sheet is updating each frame. I think you probably just want to wrap it in a repaint boundary. I think that's probably what your problem is. That's what I'd suggest. It rebuilds because the size has changed and needs to relay out widgets potentially, or change the widget layout. It's up to you to return the same hierarchy, right? It will reuse. Here's the thing: is this a problem? Is this the fact that it's rebuilding when you? I'm assuming it's when you bring up the bottom sheet. You're saying it's rebuild the Google Map widget in some fashion. Key your Google Map widget. Make sure it's got a global key. Maybe it will stick around. I don't know the ins and outs of that interaction specifically. The sheet is updated on each scroll frame. It's supposed to. Yeah, I know. Hope that helps.
All right. And before we get into any potential live coding, I just wanted to say, see? This is why I kept getting dragged around.
Right.
The joys of dog rescue.
Okay, let's see what we can do here. So we did some Swav, Tom, you're welcome to stay around. You can comment on how rubbish my code is or help me code something. I don't mind. This love, it feels like days of old.
Where is my popcorn? I need
That's my
popcorn.
popcorn, right?
Now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You know what? We're missing Edgar and Mark.
Oh yeah,
because it was the 6 of us together at DroidCon.
Oh yeah, that's some time ago. Right. Let's see if well, it's 16 by 9. So hopefully, when that's if that's large in your, I think you can make out that the code size there, right? Should I make it a bit bigger? Probably. So we left this off last week. So let's run it and see where we're at. So I'll publish what last week's code onto GitHub here. So I'll pop that in the chat for everyone. And then hopefully you can, if you want to code along with me, you can check it out if you get there quick enough. I didn't commit any of the, we don't have like a pause function right now. So I'm just going to where do we get to? This is where we got to last time, wasn't it? I think so. Let's not paint, and that way we get rid of our animation. Anytime it does actually have to repaint, it is going to change positions, but that's fine for now. Right. So we got this before, and let's just a quick overview of where we got to before. So what we've got is 2 files, and you'll find them in the lib directory here. I've not specifically not included Android, macOS. If you want to build this yourself, you'll need to run Flutter. Flutter create dot, and then dash platforms. Come on, guys, help me out. Like Windows or something like this, right? If you run that command in your that will add the Windows platform directory, right? And whatever platform you're trying to build this on, add that in there, and then that will work. So just run that command in the project directory once you check it out. All right. Anyway, so back on this. So we've got Blizzard app, just standard material app, plain simple. We've got a home screen with a single ticket provider, and we create one single widget called Snow Blizzard. Snow Blizzard is a single child render object widget, which has, fun enough, one single child. And in this case, we don't actually pass the child in at the moment in here. I feel like we played around this, and maybe I didn't commit the code. But anyway, and then maybe not. And then we pass over the vsync. Now the vsync is the ticker provider from the widget, and then if we get updated, we pass the vsync. So the vsync is where we get our ticker from. This is how we update per frame. And just down here, we in the end of the last one, we separate off our code for rendering into this class called Blizzard. That's just a logical class on which to separate from the rendering of the UI. A ticker, our ticker provider, and if we update it and we currently attached, we stop the previous one, create a new one. This is standard stuff. When our render object gets attached, we create a ticker and start it off, and we detach, we stop it. So basically, all of this stuff up here is just management to get this one callback on tick, which gives us how long it's been elapsed. We update our elapsed, and then we can do whatever we want that is painted. When the paint routine comes along, we can take that elapsed time and use that to work out how much time has elapsed, which tells us how far through the animation we are or what's changed in terms of time. Because we might get let's say it's so complicated the scene we're trying to render, we only get 30 frames a second. Well, then the elapsed time is going to keep us on track to keep the animation. So it might skip some frames, but it's going to be in time and if that kind of makes sense. Does everyone find that? I hope so. Right. Oh, everyone's left. Scott's gone. Tom's gone. Swav, you're sticking with us, are you? Right. And what I did here, I think we did this last. I'll just briefly cover this. If you press the debug borders button, this enables this boolean flag. Debug paint size enabled, which is like a global, and we just tell it to size down the rendering, in the center here, and and then restore. So every time you save, you have to restore. So this just kind of matches it up. And this just allows us to sort of debug what was out off screen, basically, in the last one. And then this goes off and just does the Blizzard paint routine. So that's literally all what's in our first file, which is basically just managing a widget. And then the Blizzard widget, we started loading in the vector math library to do our 3D. And all this has at the moment is a single paint routine, and which uses a pseudo random number generator to always seed the painting from the same location. And then our elapsed time is always going to be relative to that random entry point. So as we said before, that we're not managing. The nice thing about doing it with the pseudo random number generator is, as you see over the left here, what we're not doing is we're not storing the positions, and we're not storing state for any of the particles that we're now showing all this snow, right? Okay. So we started doing XYZ stuff before, and we parked that. So I'm gonna turn off our markings render, so we can just concentrate on what it takes to get this scene 3D. So I was having a play around earlier, so I'm going to use some reference here. But basically, I think we started. I swear I started playing around with this before. I might have reset it back to a too early state, but let's have a play around, see where we're going. So first of all, include the vector math library. I think I did, yeah. And what we actually want to do here is we want to pseudo random number generate a 3-dimensional point. So we started doing that last time. Now this is done. We started doing Z, and we don't actually use it. So let's get rid of Z out of this mix for a minute. And let's do final origin. If we're right, it was vector3.random. And you give it your random number generator, a random point, and it just does next double like we had before. So the range of x, y, and z, as it says here, is going between 0 and 1. So that's a single point cube that we're working with. I see Randall's correcting my ZZ American thing. Yeah, sure. So that should solve this. Now, the reason why we did the 1.5 was to, as we saw if we turn on the debug boundaries, was to give us the extra 25% on the top and bottom, so you don't see the particles appearing as they fall down the screen. We won't have that problem in 3D because we can just zoom the camera in. So we're gonna remove that kind of stuff and go back to 1.0, and obviously that does nothing there, so that's fine. So this takes us back to an origin of x and y. More here instead, origin.y, because now it's a vector. As I said before, a vector is just a grouping of parameters. In this case, x, y, and z. And the 25% just takes us up a half of that height. So there we are. Now our randomness is contained within the box. I think what we're going to do is so we take out 0 to 1 and take it to the width and the height. So this just scales it up. So if you choose a number, basically 0, 0 top left, 1, 1 bottom right, it just scales it up. I think we're probably going to want to change this. Right, so first things first, we want to sort out a couple of matrices. We want a projection matrix, which is how we take our three-dimensional coordinate to a two-dimensional coordinate. And then we also want a camera matrix, so that will transform these random points that we're getting into the camera space, and then we project that camera space onto a 2D plane, and that's what we're rendering. Okay, I go through this in actually a talk I did for Flutter Festival London. So you go Flutter Festival London YouTube, I'm sure you'll find my video where I talk about 3D. All right, so random points. What is our best step forward? Let's turn off. Let's forget about animation completely. So let's just comment this out. And let's draw these points on the canvas. And these are going to be, these are untransformed right now, right? So this is just wherever we pick them, and we're always going to type. Right. Look, 1, 10. So they're all, because I'm not scaling them on, they're all 0.0 to 1. So they're all 0 to 1 and the very first pixel on the top left, right? So I think we probably want to change that. I think we'll probably want to let's scale the entire canvas rather than scale each board that we're painting. This gives us a little bit more control over what we're doing. I'll answer questions, but they have to relate to what we're doing now. Any other questions? I have to wait for next week now anymore to get the questions. Oh, okay. So screen's totally white. That's because we've scaled 0 to 1 to the entire screen, and we said our circle size was snow size is 10. Well, that's 10 times the screen size now. So let's make that smaller. And obviously all the same size. We haven't got depth in here. All right, so let's turn this debugging stuff off for a minute and get back to view. All right. So we're going to need some state, and we're going to need to figure these things out. So as I said, I think we found this in the last one. Let's do a constructor. And let's do a. We did this. I'm sure I did this like last time. Sorry. So I think I said this before. The vector math library that we're using actually has functions that match OpenGL's specification of 3D. And there's examples in here, like set rotation matrix, how you deal with updating your model view matrix. There's examples of doing all these functions and what the parameters mean. In this case, we're going to make a projection matrix that matches OpenGL specification. OpenGL actually has a different coordinate system to Flutter, so we're going to have to invert out one of our axes. That's the y-axis, but we'll get to that in a minute. So field of view in the y-axis in radians. So that's, we'll say 90 degrees. Our aspect ratio is 1.0. Now we could adjust. So we could adjust the projection matrix and rebuild it if the size of our widget changes, and we could do that during layout. That's something we can do. I'm just going to force it to 1.0 for now to keep things simple. Our near is in the Z depth. How close to the camera can a point be for it to be rendered? 0.1 is a reasonable number, and then distance 100 units. Now I'm making these numbers up, right? But that's because in a three-dimensional world, there is no unit of measurement, right? Like we just have floating point numbers, right? So what a lot of things, for example, Unity treats 1 unit as 1 meter. So when you're trying to like convert kind of from one sort of real space, you're trying to like work out the size of a building in your virtual world, well, you can say if it's 6 units high, then it's 6 meters high, right? And you can make those, then everything scales the same. But as long as you've got a scale that's the same, that's fine. So in the case of what we're doing here, a 1 unit box is our entire world, right? So I could actually set the far point on this to be like 1.0, and it would contain everything, right? But these are reasonable numbers, and it gives us some room to play around with this. So okay, so you have a projection matrix. We want to. So at the moment, we're just using the flat 2D coordinates. We want to put depth into this, right? So we're going to need a camera where to look from. So we'll have a camera matrix. We'll have a vector position for our camera position, and we'll set that. Now, as I said, like you've got to think about what we're seeing in front of us is a is a box, a three-dimensional box, 0, 0, 0 in the top corner, 1, 1, 1 in the bottom right, or vice versa. And if we want to like bring the camera back and look into this box from afar, then we need to work out what that coordinate should be for the camera. Now, if the center of the screen is 0, 0, 0, and we treat the top left as negative 0.5 XYZ and plus 0.5 on XYZ on the other axis, right? Then that gives us a 1 unit box that is centered on the screen. That's what I'm imagining in my mind here when I'm doing this. So the X for the camera and the Y for the camera is the center. Now, if I put all three at 0, that's the very center of our world, right? Think of it like a galaxy, right? We're the very center, and you can't see into any further into the middle, right? So we need to bring the camera back in the Z. That's normally depth. Again, X, Y, Z are just 3 coordinates. How you use those is completely up to you. And in this case, Y is top to bottom in our world. X is left to right. And Y is depth. So that's forward and backwards. And you have the left-hand rule, which is how you can like do in your hands. So you can see X, Y, Z, and you have the right-hand wall. So left-hand rule, right-hand wall, whatever. Anyway, so I'm just going to take this back to say negative 2. So okay, let's just take us 2 units back. I may have that backwards. We'll work it out. Camera rotation. So we want a way to position the camera, like to face the camera in 3-dimensional space. Now, all these things are vector 3 vectors. These are all part of the vector math library. They're all actually part of Flutter, used inside Flutter itself. Camera rotation. So a quaternion is it represents a rotation. I won't go into the details of how it represents rotation. It's actually like a matrix. But the point here is quaternion. If you go look this up, gimbal lock. If you go look up OpenGL gimbal lock, I'm sure you'll go find some stuff online. But basically, what can happen is you rotate something around. So you think of rotation around an axis normally. So let's say you're talking about like a first-person shooter. The camera can look up, it can look down, but that's round like a horizontal axis, right? You're looking up and looking down. And if you have a vertical axis, you're looking side to side, right? And the same thing goes, obviously in depth as well. Now, the problem here is once you rotate all one way, you rotate all another way, suddenly your rotation would flip. And you see this in a lot of games, like when something rotates, it can suddenly flip into a different angle. And this is a problem with gimbal lock. Anyway, so quaternions and the mathematics behind quaternions helps solve that kind of problem. But it means that you deal with them with quaternions differently. So as you can see here, you don't just give it a rotation number. You have to give it a axis and rotation to build it, or you can give it a rotation matrix, obviously, or you give it 2 vector points, saying from this point to this point, and you're doing a rotation around those two coordinates. So anyway, right here, we want to sort of start off with an empty rotation without any parameters. We want 0 in the yaw, 0 in the pitch, and 0 in the roll. So that's obviously no rotation whatsoever. All right. So if you have any questions about what we're talking about now, chuck them in the chat. Okay. So right, let's see now. We have projection. We have a projection matrix. We have our camera position. What we need is a function to calculate our camera matrix. So again, that library that did the make perspective matrix also has a make view matrix. And that. So we have camera position, camera focus position. And this is the position that we want the camera to focus on. This is how we give it the place where it's looking, right? So this gives us the direction of the view matrix. It doesn't take a quaternion. So we need to transform our quaternion and the camera position into a new coordinate. And then because of you need to know what the up direction is. For our universe, what up is, right? So these are normally constants. So in our universe, up is going to be what's that going to be? 3, -1, or 1. We'll work it out. 1. So 0 is the bottom, 1 is going up. That's what. Yeah. That's can't be constant, but it can be fine. And then let's put that up in our up direction. And we want to make our camera focus position. So this is going to be final. Right, be the camera position plus. We want to use our quaternion to rotate. A point going forwards. So this is about. Hang on. Oh, that's not camera rotation. So we want a vector 3 here. So basically the point is it's going to rotate the second vector that we provide, the second vector 3. And rotate that vector around the using the quaternion, and then we're going to add that to our camera position. So you can imagine that we're a camera is in one place, and we take a point and we project it forward from the camera 1 unit, and then we rotate it. Now we're rotating it around that 1 unit position ahead of us, right? So can we? Yeah, so as long as we're rotating around the 0, 0 point, and then we add it, we're rotating around the camera's position, and then we're adding it as a projection. This gives us the 2 points, which gives us our view matrix. So what you need is an forward constant. So this is us looking forward at, well, you know, a vector that represents that. And as I said, the Z is going forward. So we'll have, in this case, we've got negative going away from us and positive going towards the camera. So we'll do -1. So put forward in there. So that's going to take a clone of forward, rotate it, and return it. Cool. All right. So now we can make our camera matrix. All right. So now we've got our matrices. We actually want to use them to like do the rendering. Pretty straightforward. We're going to take our origin point and run it through the transformation of our matrix. So let's think final cos equals we need to get our camera matrix. It doesn't change for the during the looping of the painting here, so we'll get it up front. Just say something like so take wherever the current parameters are, build a matrix for us, and we take that view matrix, and then we rotate our origin vector that we've got. No, we don't want to rotate. We want to transform. So transform 3, specifically about transforming a vector. Now, this actually transforms the incoming vector. So if you don't use it, if you don't already use it, then it doesn't. What's the one thing? If you're not already using that vector, then this is fine. And in case we're going to use it once, this is fine for us. However, most times you're probably going to want transformed 3. So transform 3. And if you see here, it makes a copy. If you don't give it an output, it makes a copy of the argument and then transforms it. And this way, you can get into this weird situation with the vector library where you're updating existing vectors. The vectors are immutable. They're not immutable. So yeah, you can get into some problems here. So just to be wary of that. So all right. So now we want to transform our origin. That's going to be in camera coordinates now. And then if we were to take that position and use that to generate our offset, what we're going to see? I have no idea. Let's find out. Nothing. Good. Wonderful. either that didn't paint or it's painting exactly the same. Let's painting exactly the same. All right. I might not have seen that transformation take place, but it might have changed. That's fine. I don't expect it to change all that much. Now, we want to project that point onto the 2D surface. So what we're actually using now is there is a Z coordinate, but we're not using it, right? So we need to convert the XYZ coordinate into a 2-dimensional coordinate on a plane. You can go look up. I mean, I can bring this up on the screen here probably. See if I can get up a nice picture. It's 43. Yeah, if you go to YouTube and look up 3D projection, then you get these lovely examples of how it all works, and all this lovely mathematics, I'm sure. But basically, this is essentially what I mean. I'm not going to go into this. We don't have to calculate this. This is like the mathematics behind it. But the idea is that we have a 3-dimensional coordinates and we want to project them onto a 2-dimensional plane. And in doing so, we then get the X, Y coordinates from what they would be. Oh, here you go. There you go. There's an example. There's a couple of example. Perspective is what we're doing. So as you can see here, we take the point of essentially where the camera is. We use the fun stream that is generated. This is this kind of viewport that's from the top left, bottom right of this plane to the camera. And that gives us our projection of 3D coordinates onto a 2D plane. Anyway, it sounds really complicated. We don't really care that much. So it's kind of all done for us. We just use some functions. So let's take this and put the result of this through our projection. So that would be there's actually a function in here called perspective transform. This is specifically in this. Okay. Now, if we try and run this, what happens? Nothing. Good. Kind of what I want. So we're probably, let's think about this. Are we rendering too small? Are we rendering too big? Okay, yeah. So there's a dot on the top left. So we have a positioning problem. Okay, this is because our coordinate space is now transformed, and we need to transform our the way that we're rendering these points to meet the screen. So let's take our scale and scale it by 0.5 because of 1 unit reaches across the entire screen. Then we want to translate 1, oh, not 10, 1, 1. That's really scaled. And then we want to scale our coordinates. As I said, because the y-axis is inverted, we want to scale our coordinates in the y-axis. So this basically inverts the y-axis. And that, okay, we have a bubble of them. All right, let's make them smaller. Okay, so we just have some dots. This is okay, I guess. I think probably what we want to do is make sure that these points, so these are from 0.01 to 1, 1, which actually moves them out of center. So we want to negate a center coordinate from this. So let's make a center coordinate. Okay, let's run that. Okay, now they're centered. Now our projection wasn't just projecting them from the bottom left because they were moved off the screen. Now they're in the center. Okay, so now we've got our snow particles in the center of the screen and they're projected. What we now want to do, I think we probably want to give them some depth. So let's output some information here. Okay, our Z coordinates are, because we did a transform, because we did a transform through, they're actually slightly off. They're in 1 unit ahead. So I think what we could probably do is transform that into a size. So basically, what I'm trying to do now is we're just drawing circles. We're drawing dots that represent these particles. So we could draw images and have them as smoke and all sorts of other fun things. But basically, we were just drawing circles. So we need to convert the Z coordinate into a size for our two-dimensional circle. So let's take 1.0. The pos.z minus 1.0, and then if we multiply that by a fractional amount, our print statement. I think we're just too far away. Let's take the camera closer. Okay, there is depth there. Okay, good. So what you're seeing here now is that some of the circles are further behind the ones in front. So, okay, so now we have X, Y, Z. They're plotted, they're rendered. Now what we want to do is move the camera. Okay, so we're back to Flutter world now. So we're going from 3D back to Flutter. We need to read the keyboard. So we're on a desktop computer, and we're in a render object. The best way we can do this is just access the keyboard directly. So we do that with raw keyboard dot, not listener, dot raw keyboard. Pretty sure it's raw keyboard. Hang on. The one time I want this. It is raw keyboard. Oh, do you know what? It's probably just not imported. Hang on. There we go. For services. Let's just pull in. Okay, so actually, where was that? Raw keyboard instance. Add listener. And we'll put that callback in a minute. And then so when we get attached UI, we add the listener, and we get detached from the UI our render object and remove the listener. Rodrigo's showing me up by saying you can just divide the Z by the XY or the Y by the X, and you get the same thing. It's not. Right. Okay. So now we've got a listener. Let's add a. We've got our tick listener. Let's add a on key pressed. And raw key. Is it raw key? Okay, so now we'll put that as our listener. And here is we're going to say print. Fingers don't fail me now. We're going to print that event. So if I press W, there we go, S, A, D, you get up and down events coming in with logical keys, those lovely key IDs, and as you can see here, labeled W, S, A, D, and I pressed F by mistake, but yeah. So all these lovely things. So what we want to do is keyboards. I won't go into this, but they're called logical keys because actually keyboards, not all keyboards are the same. So as you know, like some keyboards have media keys and things. They emit scan codes, right? Scan codes are actually what the keyboard scans. It scans the matrix of your keyboard and it sends them to the computer. And those scan codes actually have the reason why you, in this, say on a Mac, when you plug in a keyboard, it asks you, is it a PC this, is it that? Press this certain key on the keyboard, is so it can work out what type of keyboard emits what type of scan code so it can interpret it right. It doesn't, they just think that's a neat way of doing it. You can automatically detect it, but whatever. Anyway, the point here is logical keys are the conversion of those keys that you tap on the keyboard to what the operating system understands. So in this case, Flutter has done that for us. So a logical key on in here is going to be the same on Windows as it is on Android. If you have like the soft keyboard up, it will just emit the same, or hardware keyboard plugged in, it will emit the same thing. Anyway, so in this case, we want to check if the event is raw keyboard down event, else if event is raw key up event. And then if that event logical key is equal to logical keyboard key key W. So yeah, like WASD, sure, W. And then we want to do something. We can't go down and up at the same time, and we'll make up take priority. So we'll just do an else if this logical key is so game, by the way, these game buttons are game joystick buttons. If you have like a PlayStation controller or Xbox controller plugged in, it will automatically emit these appropriate keys, like you go left thumb and all this kind of stuff. And these have a fractional amount in them for how much X and Y the thumbstick is moved and all that kind of fun stuff. Just to let you know. Key S. Right. Okay, so now we have our S. I'll put it down here. So when the key is pressed, that's not when the frame is rendered, and we want to move at a rate that is in time with the elapsed time of our ticking. So to synchronize these two bits up, the keyboard presses that come independent to our rendering, what we want to do is simply record that the keys are pressed. So we can simply do that. There's lots of ways to do this. I'm not gonna like you normally have like a key. If you're doing a game, you have a keyboard manager that just deals with this kind of stuff and hides the complexity away. But right now, we're just doing a quick example. So we'll say move forward, false, move backwards. Am I the only one left in here? Oh no! Oh, I have Tomic disappeared. And do we have a Swav here somewhere? Yeah. All right, good. Feel free to comment, guys, if you want. All right, move forwards. Equals true. All right, so when we press down, move forward gets to true, and we press up, move forward sets to false. See what I'm going to do just for the people at home. I'm going to make it full screen. Yeah, that should work, I guess. Hope that's easier for people to see. Right. If you've got any problems, message in the chat. And I'm not going to be looking at the chat all that often, so Randall, feel free to jump on and speak up or whatever. I don't know if there's any points. Just make this interactive. It doesn't have to mean me talking to the camera, you know. So
it always means exactly that.
Doing a great job of just talking to all of us, and we're just listening. We're being obedient students.
Is my voice soothing? Is it?
I'm using it to get prepared for my nap that's coming up shortly. So yes.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Right. All right. So basically, these booleans now represent if the key is down, it's true, and if it's up, it's false. That's nice and simple. So when we get our tick duration, we want to update our position based on the time that's been elapsed. So to work out, let's make our functions in here, right? So we probably want some sort of simple functions to modify our matrices. So let's say void move forward. We want to pass what's called the delta, or basically the amount of time that's elapsed between this frame and the last frame, which is a fractional unit. So let's say I'll give it. I'll explain more in a second. Let's get some functions in here. So camera position. We have an inverted z-axis here. I think we're going to do this and move backwards. So if we were to pass in a unit of 1 to this function, to these functions, it would be the entirety of forward, which is 1 unit in one axis of our world, right? So obviously we negate it when it's positive, minus, whatever. So we at fraction, that means we'd be moving 1 unit per second. Okay, if I was to add I could multiply this by 0.5, 50%. Now I'll be moving half of 1 unit of our 3-dimensional space per second, because delta will be units of seconds. Yeah, that's normally the case. You could do it lots of other ways, but normally when you're dealing with measurements, you're doing pixels per second or something per second. You could do it per millisecond. You could do it lots of different ways. Stick to seconds. It's a lot easier to understand, right? You don't have to do a lot of math in your head, right? So anyway, so here when we elapse, this elapsed time is elapsed since the start of the timer. So to make our delta, let's just do final elapsed delta. Is going to be the previous elapsed time. No, the new elapsed time, which is going to be greater, minus the previous elapsed time. This gives us, they're both durations. This is going to give us the amount of time that's between the 2 time units, time points. And we get that in microseconds, which is the highest duration that you can get in the smallest unit of measurement in duration. And then we take that and divide it by duration dot microseconds per second. Now, the number stored in elapsed delta is going to be a floating point number. If it had the value of 1, it'd be 1 second. So this is going to give us a fractional amount of per second that our has elapsed between 2 ticks. This is how all games and animation work, right? Like, you need to understand that the time between them is how you would work out how much has elapsed. So if your frame count differs, things don't speed up and slow down in your game, right? Without the elapsed time, like, depending on how many frames you get, how many ticks you get, things would suddenly speed up and slow down. This is how old games used to work. They used to be limited by the CPU power, which meant that if you had a faster CPU, the game would run. Like, say you had the game was built on 100 megahertz CPU, and you had a 200 megahertz CPU, the game would run 100% faster on your computer.
It is like that, because if you put the emulator for Spectrum, try to run a game on a full speed, essentially you won't see the game. It's just game over. That's it, done.
Yeah,
you die.
It's like how could you run a 1 megahertz game on a 1 gigahertz machine? It'd be, it's like 1,000 times faster. It's 100 times, whatever. Anyway, so back to this. So if we're moving forwards, forwards. What have I done? Good finally now. Forwards. If you're moving forwards, then we want to take out instance of Blizzard. Oh, is it? Oh, good. Right, whatever. And then we want to call move forwards by that elapsed delta time. And again, you can't have both, but we'll do an else if. Move backwards. So some games do this thing where they allow both, and if you hold down, let's say forward and backwards, you stand still, because forwards at the same rate you're going backwards, they would negate out from each other. So it depends on how you want to build your game. So or whatever you build. Right? Okay. So if we now say mark needs paint and restart, nothing has changed. This is good. Now if I press W, what happens? Oh, let's get rid of those print statements. So W goes forward, S goes back. There you go. Ooh, it's 3D. It's amazing. There you go. So we haven't done much here. Like as you can see, there's only a few lines in here. That's kind of cool, right? what can we do next is the question.
Enable animation.
Oh,
You
yeah.
You could
Let's
wrap
do
it
that.
up for the day because we're sort of running over time.
If you need to head off, feel free to head off. I'm gonna make.
I'm
No, I want
just trying
to
to
make. No, let's put the animation back in.
okay.
So we're working out our X and Y.
Z.
Yeah, I mean, we can keep the Z the same, right? I mean, we could it's randomized, right? I don't know. We could change it every time and have like a marching effect. We need to create a new. This is like. Let's just call it translated. It's not really the correct thing. Animated? No, but I know it's a point. But it's animated. Now it's moved. Basically, we're creating a new vector point based on the new X, Y, and we'll keep the Z. And then we put that point through our transformation matrix. Okay, we're a bit farther down than what I wanted. So plus 0.5 will move it up, right? No, down. All right, minus 0.5. Yeah. And if I zoom in a little bit, there's real 3D snow. I mean, like we could take this a step further, right? So we could. I suppose I'm drawing circles right now, but there's no reason why we couldn't get like a little snowflake like image and have snowflake images like that's falling down the screen. Like that'd be cool. We could also change the color of based on their distance from the camera. So that could be an interesting thing, right? So if we say, let's call this final. And then no, we can use the same. We could have something like paint color, and then our UI color. Import. Now we need a. Is there like a from RGB? Oh, there is RGB 0. What we could actually do is this 1.0. I don't know what space this is. This is integers. What's the other one from RGBA? RGB. So we'll do so white would be FF or 255. So in here that's RGB, and then let's set the opacity to be the distance. See what happens. Okay. We'll always.
So you have to scale it to the max.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. That's not right. We're clamp.
They should correspond with the size of the flakes, yeah.
Well, yeah, which is I'll work out if I'm too many brackets, not enough brackets. Okay. It was overflying and then it went clapping. So the further they are away from the camera, the darker they get. Right. So we could now, if I changed our random coordinate to randomize on a larger plane, for example, right? So we've got if I zoom out, there's our 1 unit box. So I wonder what happens if we were to take this same randomization thing and this So on our X plane, times it by 10 and hit run. Zoom out. We don't have rotation here, but I need half of this, right? So this needs to be it's centered on one unit, which is obviously not the center of the value that we're actually doing. So we actually need to minus vector 3 of our randomness. So it'd be 0.5 and 5. Well, sorry, 5 on the X. 0.5. Vector 3. Okay, so zoom back. Let's change. Let's get rid of that. Let's just make them white for a second. Let's just turn that off. So now we have the same number, 10 units across. It looks further spaced out because we're not doing a density. We're not working on density here. We still draw the same number of units, same number of particles. So let's do it at 5. So yeah, 2.5 wide, and now we can make it. Let's make it 2. Well, let's make it 2.5 deep. Let's make it 10 deep. Let's do something like that, right? Right. So this. And then if we now spaced out our particles over a very large area, right? So we're going to need to draw a lot more particles to actually make that up. I think what we could probably do is front of the camera, Y, and then increase this to, I don't know, 600. It looks like coming towards the camera. That's just because I'm moving back forwards. Yeah. So we could, like, I mean, there's a ton of ways of doing this, right? Like, what is there anything else we want to do? No suggestions, anyone? Okay. We could do. I'll tell you what. I'll do it now because we're running out of time. I think that's it. I'm going to push this code in just a second, and then you can all have it. Well, I'll just do it right now. Code changes. Oh, bomb. Add 3D. Yeah. Add 3D. There you go. So you can all grab this code now. If it hits the camera, hit effect. Yeah, I mean, like, you can do that. So at the moment, we don't change. What we probably should be doing there is saying if the Z is a negative, it's a positive number because negative is towards outside, whichever way around it is. You could say don't show it, but also at that point you could also say perform some animation and make an object to that position, right? Because there's nothing here that says, oh, I'm just using 3-dimensional points, but they could be anything you want, right? Like, as I said, we're calling draw circle. You could do draw image, and then you can actually have it so it animates based on time, have like a puffing smoke effect, right? All this stuff is possible. What other points do we have here? You Brandon? You all right?
Just thinking we're getting close to running out of electrons. That's all.
Running out of electrons, right? No, we're not answering general questions.
There's no more questions.
There's no more questions. I see. Okay.
No, there was one question from Billy about creating some Dart console Firestore app which I done actually in the last half year twice. So Inverters was nice enough to actually create an auto-generated RESTful Firebase package. So that's essentially RESTful API converted into Dart automatically, and you can use it. And what you have there is a full spec of this API. So you can do things like, for example, remote config, manipulation, not only reading it, but you can manipulate essentially your Firebase from the Flutter app. I haven't tried this. I know this is having been updated for a while, but this is auto-generated, so it's not a big deal. So there's a way to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and someone asked, sorry, I say someone, Roa. Hey, Roa. Nice to see you. Can you share the code? Yeah, the code is always shared. It was shared at the beginning of the stream from the previous one. If you go look at by the way, anyone who wants to know how to start, we did a 2D one last week. So if you want to go look back, you can watch there. And you can also find the code. The first commit is from last week. This commit I just did is from this week. So that should find it 2 minutes ago. It's added the commit in there. So yeah, that will take you through.
Tag it.
It's a couple of commits. Right. So I think that's it then. No more questions. I hope you got the code, and thank you for joining us for another Humpday Q&A. And if you like the live coding, make some comments on the videos, and maybe we'll do some more next week.
Yep.
Bye for now.
And we'll see you next week. 166 hours from now. Yes.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for stopping by.